Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. I apologize for moving back and forth my times for this live stream, but I did want to start a little earlier if I could, simply because I know it's just getting late for a lot of people all over the world. I also want as big of a distance between this video and WWDC as possible. It's not even 24 hours, so I assume most people will just try to ignore last minute leaks and predictions. So I just wanted to cover them very briefly, just to sort of put my stamp on what I believe are the more reputable things or not. I will not be creating like a hardcore list of things that I expect to see or not. I will be going through the last few leaks we have gotten in the last couple of days, and I'll try to basically put them into context of all the announcements that we kind of expect to see beyond everything that I'll list today, because obviously when I talk about Apple Intelligence as something that was like, I don't know if it's a rename, but it's basically Apple's new term on their AI features inside iOS and macOS and their other operating systems. And obviously, when I mention something like Apple Intelligence, I don't just mean in the context of one specific feature. It's now a broader suite that Apple will keep on updating. Part of it is powered by their own neural engines, parts is powered by their own clouds, part might be powered by ChatGPT from OpenAI. So this is kind of how you can expect this video to work. That being said, I apologize for not having been here for the last few days. There definitely was some things to cover, and I'll be basically summarizing that. As always, I encourage you to like, subscribe, share, and comment on the video. Of course, commenting is also best when you do it during the live stream, so you can let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you like to see me cover else. And of course, be prepared for tomorrow's stream. Now, unfortunately, as you guys know, we cannot like co-stream Apple's events in the sense that I cannot give you like Apple's video feed or audio feed of their events, but I can definitely stream simultaneously to that event. So tomorrow, about half an hour before the event, I will start my preparation stream where we'll go through what we expect. So this is kind of why today is a little bit more relaxed. We don't need to do it all today. We also still have tomorrow, and then of course I'll stay on for a little bit after a while after the event to discuss what has connected the most with me, what I still like I'm super curious about, and then throughout the week, I apologize, I do have to work a little more, but I have tuned my time so that I can actually stream almost daily. But I will be installing iOS 18 on my iPhone, and I will be probably installing iPadOS 18 on my iPad Pro. The one thing I won't be doing is I won't be installing the latest version of macOS because, well, that's where I stream from. I really, really don't want any tech issues there. You guys know how paranoid I get about that. So this is kind of our plan for the next week, and I do hope you stay tuned. As always, if you also want to support this channel directly, which is a great help, you can leave a super chat or a super sticker right while I'm live. It's always well appreciated. Or if you want to support this channel directly in the long term, you can subscribe to my Patreon. Link is in the description below. So that being out of the way, oh yeah, right. Wow, that was a crazy animation. I do want to cover what was happening basically this week in the sense of what last minute leaks for DubDub did we get. Most of it did come from Mark Gurman. Nothing like today, or at least nothing serious. He did blow his load a little earlier and did not wait for Sunday, but he did confirm very recently that we are not getting any hardware WWDC. So let's see if he will be correct on that one. So in the predictions case, according to most leaks and rumors, no hardware. I personally wouldn't be too surprised to see some M4 Mac Mini or something like that. Definitely would be great to see M4 Max, M4 Ultra based Mac Studios and Mac Pros given just how long Apple hasn't updated their desktops. But that being said, the focus definitely is software, and basically the main star of the show will be Apple Intelligence. Now, Apple Intelligence is very easily Apple's term for their AI features, right? And of course, if you create an abbreviation for Apple Intelligence, it's AI. So Apple is kind of hijacking that term, and I absolutely love it. There was like a joke from the Alibaba CEO a couple of, what was it, a year or so ago, who said that like he doesn't believe in artificial intelligence. He believes in like Alibaba intelligence. And yeah, Apple is actually going through with that, and I love that. I actually kind of was angry with myself when I read that, because I was like, oh man, why didn't I think about it? Partially because it made me think of the App Store, right? App in App Store simply means application, right? And the word application has nothing to do with the word Apple. But because obviously Apple runs the App Store, right? People associate the word app in App Store kind of with Apple, even though it's not that, it's the Apple App Store. And I'm thinking that this will be actually quite similar. So we'll be talking about Apple Intelligence, artificial intelligence features. So that will be quite funny in how we'll parcel all that stuff. Now, I'm thinking of finally paying for Mark Gurman, because he obviously does provide value to this channel, but I haven't done yet. So the big shout out to Benjamin Mayo, I assume. Don't want to say Mayo. At 9 to 5 Mac for two great write-ups we'll be reading today. And basically, Mark Gurman does regurgitate some of the older AI points now under Apple Intelligence, but he also brings up some new stuff. Seto Kaiber, long Twitter friend, or like not so long Twitter friend, but a dear Twitter friend, welcome to the channel. Perhaps could be a better acronym to not be confused with artificial intelligence. Oh, you mean like iPhone intelligence, right? iPad intelligence, like I. The problem is that now we are also reaching like some levels where it's like questionable in terms of like how nice does it sound. But also you have to understand, Apple wants the confusion. Apple is not first to like use the term AI. Even back in the day when they were objectively first with like really pushing for their neural engine coprocessors and stuff like that, they called it machine learning. In fact, back in the day, everyone used terms more like that rather than AI. Even Nvidia, like the AI king company right now, right, worth almost $3 trillion after the latest gold rush on their stock, was using features like deep learning, right? This is where DLSS, their technology for super sampling game data, comes from. And yeah, they called it DLSS or DLAA when we're looking at a variant of that, right? And back in the day, Apple much more preferred the terms machine learning. So Apple now wants the confusion. Apple wants to enter the game and say, nope, we're going to call it AI, but we are always saying Apple Intelligence, right? Nobody on the stage tomorrow will abbreviate Apple Intelligence as AI. If they ever say AI, they mean artificial intelligence. And if they ever say Apple Intelligence, they will say Apple Intelligence. And I highly assume that Apple Intelligence will actually not be written as two words. I assume that it will be the Apple logo plus the word intelligence. So the company will officially announce the new plan at its WWDC keynote on Monday. Again, shout out to tomorrow's live stream. It's 10 a.m. Pacific time. For me, it's 7 p.m. So I'll be going on around like 9:30 a.m. Pacific time or 6:30 p.m. my time, which is Berlin, Germany. Rather than focus on writing poetry or making up images, the Apple Intelligence suite of features will use large language models to offer functionality that helps users throughout their daily life, with abilities like summarization and rich auto-reply suggestions. So next prediction point, right? So we've talked about no hardware, right? now my next point is AI or Apple Intelligence will be the focus. They will talk about it with iOS 18, but they will also talk about it throughout the event, right? Similar to how sometimes Apple will introduce, like, sort of finish iOS and then move on to iPadOS and macOS, and then they mention new features, and you briefly wonder, well, does that mean that those features aren't on iOS? Well, no, it's just that some features are shared across the system. So I assume that Apple Intelligence will be mentioned in like in cohesion with every single operating system, at least iOS, iPadOS, macOS, and most likely watchOS. But who knows? Maybe they will have even more like visionOS stuff. They will say like maybe we improved like pass-through quality and stuff like that. Maybe for tvOS they will say like we are now suggesting movies and TV shows to you based on Apple Intelligence, right? So we will hear the term Apple Intelligence a decent amount and throughout all operating systems. And my like secondary predictions to Apple Intelligence is basically like a minus point, but it's a very positive point for me, which is the lack of focus on generative AI in the sense of like images and chatbot stuff, where like chatbot, tell me a story, create a poem for me. So instead, Apple will really try to like hijack your existing applications, right? If you have like notifications in messages or in email, right? They will give you summaries for that. The same way it can do so now for Safari. So if you're too lazy to read an entire Mark Gurman article and there isn't a 9 to 5 meg summary of it, you can get even lazier and ask Apple Intelligence. So this is basically my prediction, which is that less focus on like an independent chatbot, or maybe even like no focus on an independent chatbot, and Apple Intelligence features are baked into applications, and then you also have access to them through Siri. But they're not obfuscated. They're not Siri alone. You are basically able to find them directly in the app. Either they pop up automatically based on context, or they're like dedicated UI and UX elements to bring up those AI features. For example, if I assume that if you want to summarize your notifications, there might be a button right in Notification Center next to the multiple notifications that you got. And if it comes to things like auto-completing, like an auto-reply or something like that, I assume that basically if you click on reply, it will just suggest you some text almost automatically without even you doing so. That's kind of my prediction. Deep integration into apps, no chatbot stuff, no generating images, things like that. Generative mail will also use AI to intelligently categorize incoming mail to tidy up customers' unread inboxes. Now, yeah, but we've had like algorithms for that stuff. This is also what I want to say. A lot of features, this is like a tertiary prediction for Apple Intelligence. A lot of features that we would have gotten like under machine learning terms or just like as a new feature will be branded as Apple Intelligence, right? Like categorizing email, yeah, maybe Apple will use like neural networks for that, but previously, even if they did, they wouldn't have called it AI, but now they will, basically. That's my prediction, not just for WWDC, but going forward. Generative AI will also power a new emoji creator feature that can create new emoji icons that can relate to what the user is typing. I've already said that I think this is a great idea, partially because I believe that Apple's emoji designs are the absolute best. So if they feed like an algorithm with their own emoji, maybe even with like some emoji that haven't been released or something like that, and then they give it like a way to like mix and match certain parts, even stuff that already exists, I think that's great. Bloomberg says the system can update on the fly as the user types out words in the text field. This is actually going to be really interesting how those kinds of features impact battery life, RAM management. It's very likely that most of it is exclusive, on, at least on the iPhone, to 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max and newer. I assume on iPad we're going to see a lot on the M1 devices and up, but then maybe some stuff that is exclusive on M4. And then on Max, I honestly don't know. um, so it will allow users to go far beyond the official set of emoji defined by the Unicode consortium. The Photos app will gain new AI-infused photo editing features similar to Smart Eraser found in Google Pixel phones, or something like Subject Lift right on iPhone. But we already have Subject Lift, now Smart Eraser. The interesting thing is that something like Smart Eraser is really based on something like Subject Lift, which is you obviously need to recognize an object before you remove it, but then you need like AI to autofill it, and we already have that functionality in multiple applications like Pixelmator and stuff like that. It's just now it's default in the Photos app. Recording made in voice memos will also be automatically transcribed. Now, this is where we come to like system level and app level features where I won't be like listing everyone individually, but basically like a lot of new functionality inside existing apps, like no focus, at least from what I understand, on dramatically new apps. So a Photos app with much better editing capabilities, a voice memos app with transcription features, a notification a notes app that does all the summary and auto completion stuff, and now integrates better with voice memos, and now integrates better with a new calculator that is like updated across the operating systems, but it also happens to be brand new for the iPad. And all of that, those things like partially or fully powered by Apple Intelligence. Next is Siri. Siri by itself will be getting a lot of features. My prediction is that Siri will mostly get features at WWDC or like in the initial rollout of iOS 18 that are married to the features of the applications, while anything that could go more into like the ChatGPT competition route, that is in the future, or it will be handled by the likes of ChatGPT, but we have not gotten any clear rumors about it. It seems like there is a deal with Apple and OpenAI, but we don't know if that actually means like ChatGPT 4.0 as a voice assistant comes to iOS, or if it just means that for some cloud-based AI features, Apple just defers to ChatGPT. Especially if Apple wants to have any kind of like, I know that it's technically all generative AI, but to me, generative usually would describe more stuff like creating images and videos out of nothing, right? And creating stuff like poems and writing entire essays. I assume if Apple wants any of those features, those will not be based on local compute, and those will probably not be based on Apple's even own servers, unless Apple really starts to invest in them a crazy amount. But I believe an initial rollout for those features, if it comes, I'm not still sure that it does, will be based on ChatGPT and OpenAI. So there will be significant improvements to Siri. There will be AI-powered code completion in Xcode. I also assume there will probably be, but I don't know if all that stuff will be shown at Xcode, at DubDub, which I assume there will also be new AI features as part of Final Cut Pro, maybe new features inside Logic. It's hard to predict that stuff because we have gotten some new Logic features already. We are also like getting a new Final Cut update, so I'm not sure if Apple has even more in the works in the near future, but I definitely will do believe that Apple will keep on rolling out features like that. Apple Intelligence will be powered by a combination of on-device and cloud or served capabilities. There's also a partnership with OpenAI to underpin certain functionality. You see, Mark Gurman also doesn't go into details and he probably knows way more than I do now. Relying on the cloud for AI flies in the face of some of Apple's previous messaging around user privacy. Nope, it doesn't. The same way that saving pictures in iCloud does not go against Apple's privacy messaging. I've already outlined that in the past. Apple has a plan to address those concerns. Firstly, its servers will use confidential computing designs to make the data processing as private as possible. I assume this was supposed to have like a secondly part. Bloomberg today says Apple also will not build user profiles based on customer data. Yeah, that is basically secondly. And it will make new reports that explain to users how their data is protected. Guys, does any of this look familiar? Does this maybe remind you of like the privacy like report cards inside the App Store, or the fact that Apple already refuses to build like user profiles on a large scale? Like, this is nothing new to for Apple. All of the new features are also expected to be opt-in. Speaking of opt-in, recall Microsoft recently reversed course on their new AI feature, Recall. It will now be opt-in and not opt-out. This was a feature that was basically every couple of seconds or whatever, taking screenshots of your home screen or like your screen in general, and then using OCR, using AI capabilities to analyze the text on it, probably images and stuff like that, giving you like a rich search capability in the past. Think of it like Time Machine, but instead of working on like an app to app and overall system basis, it just overwrites everything through like pictures. And while it's not the worst idea technically, it created a ton of security concerns, ton of privacy concerns, especially without it being only opt-out. And now, after all this backlash, Microsoft basically reversed itself. It's important to note that this was supposed to run, or it's supposed to run on device directly, so it does not use the cloud. So there are some like fewer concerns, one might say, but still, it's Windows. Windows has a ton of vulnerabilities. Like overall, granted, every open operating system has vulnerabilities. Mac OS has vulnerabilities, but it's just that there's also like the question, well, if it's a work computer, what do I do if somebody else has the admin rights and whatever? Like, it's just a nightmare, and I'm very glad they went back on it, at least partially. I personally hate this feature in many, many ways. If Apple introduces something like that, I won't be using it either, just for like storage considerations. I don't want to give up 70 gigabytes of my SSD for this, but yeah, so opt-in for Microsoft, opt-in for Apple, as it seems. All of the features also expect to be opt-in. Yes. Now, we do have some smaller stuff on the side. We've basically talked about like Apple introducing RCS into the iOS messaging app later this year. This is an official promise from Apple. Of course, stuff like the new emoji capabilities will be a part of like an important part of Messages, but apparently the actual Messages app will be getting some features that apparently are widely requested. I don't know. I certainly didn't request them, but basically in the tap back feature, so where you can like specifically like comment almost on a message, you can now use any emoji instead of the 6 ones that are pre-set up. Again, they're saying it was kind of asked for. I have seen that WhatsApp or was it Telegram has that feature where you then basically get to choose from the entire emoji raster. So I assume that Apple will basically be following suit in that regard. There will also be features such as scheduling a message, which is really great if you want to send somebody happy birthday or something right at midnight. So that's cool. In general, though, I am somebody who's very, very happy with the Messages app, since they added like inline replies. That was basically all I needed. You will also be able to more expressive in your communication with the addition of text effects that expand beyond the current screen and bubble effects options. That's cool. As I said, you will be able to schedule messages and they will be adding RCS. So iMessage is a very important part of Apple's basically like push for iPhones, iPads, the entire ecosystem. To me, I would just add it as a further prediction, which I've said already, that individual apps will get like specific better improvements. Some of it AI stuff, some of it just general improvements. I've mentioned stuff like calculators, notes, integration between individual apps like reminders and calendars, and now apparently messages, like as a standalone app, is actually getting quite a lot of features. So it's a little different from just the stuff that is primarily improved through AI. This is where we're also getting like something relatively big like RCS. Again, as a European, I kind of don't care, but I know a lot of my North American friends do. So carpe diem, basically. Beyond that, this is now where we go into system level stuff. Now, system level stuff is usually it depends on like your specific needs, just how much it influences you. Now, the latest Android version actually introduces like a new mode that lets you like create like secondary versions of applications and basically like your entire phone to better hide your stuff, right? So if you have like abusive parents who maybe don't tolerate of certain lifestyle choices and they do demand to know your passcode and stuff like that, but you are tech savvy and you basically set up your phone as like, well, if I do this, it basically shows my good boy Android, and if I do this, it shows my actual life. But yeah, Apple won't be doing something as extreme like that, which I actually would want them to do eventually. Like, I know it's like the problem is once it comes into iOS, there's also the problem with like, how do you hide that, given that people usually are way better informed about iOS features existing than they are about like comparable Android features existing. But the reason why I would love features like that is some people, as I mentioned, do have abusive parents, abusive partners, and Apple has already introduced quite a lot of features for those kinds of people, and I just want them to keep expanding. One aspect of that seems to be that now you will be able to lock individual applications with Face ID. I would assume Touch ID as well, if it's like also like a feature for iPads, and obviously there are tons of iPads with Touch ID rather than Face ID. But this is not like an API. I assume this is like this overrides just any kind of access to that application to Face ID. While currently you already can lock certain apps or certain app features behind Face ID, that was up to the developer. Apple was basically offering an API for that. While right now, it seems like you will be just be able to do so like on an individual app basis, which is cool. Apple has been, as I said, lacking in terms of stuff like that. Like their hidden folder in the Photos app for years was not even like passcode locked or anything. But I would also add, it's kind of time for Apple to introduce like new passcodes and stuff like that. I know why Apple doesn't want to do it, because they know that people are stupid and people will forget their passcodes, their passwords, whatever, beyond just their own, like their one Apple ID. And Apple believes that they will have a ton of backlash if people will essentially never be able to get back to their own photos if like their hidden photos album is like locked behind an entirely new passcode and something like that. That being said, I do still think it should be an option because, as I said, some people do struggle with abusive parents, abusive partners, etc. So yeah, I just found that like very interesting. This is basically like a dumber version of what we already have when it comes to like having Face ID inside individual apps or having it supported on an API level, but it's still a good option to have. Yeah, so the new iOS 18 feature will take things further by allowing for apps to be locked entirely, even if the iPhone is unlocked overall. Makes sense, obviously. But again, if you are like maybe you quickly gave like somebody your phone, or maybe they just said they wanted to Google something, so you unlock your phone for them, but now they do have your phone in their hands, and that obviously means that they could do some bad stuff, or maybe even just look into stuff that you don't want them to look at, and this will basically be your way to hide it, which is great. As I said, I do appreciate me some privacy features like that. There's also like this will basically be this is basically like a system level feature. So I've said we're getting like no hardware, we're getting individual apps, most of them AI enhanced, but some of them greatly enhanced in general functionality. We have Apple Intelligence, which permeates throughout the OS, but also has like deep, obviously, improvements for Siri and some integration into whatever they partner with in terms of open struggling. Okay, it seemed to be like my iPad. Maybe my 5G was like bad for a second. Guys, if you're watching, please let me know. Like, is it working for you? What about the audio quality, the video quality? As always, please let me know if I'm stupid enough to accidentally click on my mute button and stuff like that. So I always appreciate some help so I don't drive myself insane expecting some stuff to work, but then it doesn't and whatever. So next is control center, and I will put control center right into like system level features, but also partially into the redesign category, which will come right after this. Apple has tested a redesigned version of CC with a customizable layout for iOS 18, according to multiple sources familiar with the matter. Now, as I said, I do count this into like a system level prediction, but that being said, when it comes to redesign, it seems like further customization is a big part of iOS 18, similar to how Apple finally introduced widgets and customizations for the lock screens and things like iOS 14, iOS 16. It now seems like Apple will be giving a lot of customizability for those kinds of things in iOS 18. And part of that will be almost like a degradation, which is like usually everything Apple does kind of exists in a fixed grid, right? Like your home screen exists in a grid of app icons, and basically one takes the spot of another if you move it away. And the same with your widgets on the home screen exist in that same grid. And your control center is in many ways just a grid. And in fact, the control center actually has a couple of elements like your Wi-Fi and cellular data controls, your music widget, your weather, your brightness, your volume controls that are fixed in place. You can not change them even inside that grid, and that seemingly will be changing. The new control center will feature a drag and drop system that allows at least some of the controls be reorganized directly on the interface. Currently, you do have to do that basically in the settings app. And as they put it, currently only the smaller controls in the bottom half of control center, which is basically the controls beyond those that I mentioned, like the music widget, your volume controls, your brightness, whatever. For things like the flashlight, load power mode, there's obviously a lot more than that, can be rearranged or removed, but it does happen through the settings app. You basically have like a list and you sort them in that list, and according to their position on that list, they take up a space inside the control center grid. In fact, when you actually go to macOS control center, you can actually see that stuff is movable. Now it depends a little bit. Some of that I believe is like fixed, but it already gives you some of that. Can you move that around? No, you cannot. Wait, did I? Oh yeah, those are movable, but they're movable to like. What was it like the status bar on top, right? So for example, I have like a version of the music widget basically up top, which basically turns into a like more simplified like control, like a volume controller, and then it would pop up a more like pretty user interface. By the way, I just saw that I am basically covering this up, what I'm talking about. So I'll just briefly move that downwards. So if you go to like my control center, and now you guys can see my Wi-Fi name. I apologize for that. Right, but basically what you can do is you can move those elements from the control center to the status bar on top. And as I said, this would be sort of what like your volume controls looks like. Instead of here just changing like your volume, you now get much richer controls based on like the hardware that you're putting out to. And the same goes for like your brightness, for like your keyboard brightness. You can like separate that from the control center. You can very easily get to like the specific settings portion inside the settings app. So I assume that Apple basically is learning a little bit from macOS, but given that iPhones don't have like a status bar on top that is like fully customizable, instead they will just let you do more customizations inside control center itself, which I think is a dope idea, to be honest. If this plan moves forward, it would represent the biggest redesign in Control Center. Now, I should say that there have also been rumors about like a richer like music widget inside Control Center, but beyond that, we haven't actually gotten that much. So if I would put like more privacy and stuff like that and control center into system level features, I wouldn't necessarily say like control center is a big redesign, for example. On the iPhone 10 and newer, the menu can be opened by swiping down from the top right of the screen, providing controls for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, display brightness, many other system functions. You guys know that, but if you didn't know that, you also saw some of that in the macOS control center right now. And part of that, I also should note that we don't know which parts of the rumored features are like iOS exclusives, which ones are shared with like iPadOS, which ones might be shared all across to like macOS and maybe even tvOS, which these days has like a control center. So unfortunately, I cannot tell you that. The history of the past few WWDCs is one where Apple introduces like a lot of iOS specific stuff, especially anything that like approaches like a redesign, but unfortunately a lot of it then comes out to iPadOS a full year later. I do understand the thought behind that. The iPad does have a different aspect ratio, a much larger screen, so it definitely needs some specific optimizations, but whether it needs a full year for that, that's another discussion. Yeah, so basically a redesigned, or like a, I would say almost like a more convenient control center. Now, when it comes to actual redesigns, this is where we are continuing on top of rumors that we have already talked about. And I've already said that, for example, iOS 18 is likely to ditch, for the most part, like that fixed grid for the home screen. But we've also had rumors, also from Mark Gurman, that you would be able to customize app icons. So like setting a specific background color for them. And it seems like there might be a system level feature for that is kind of in line with that. So iOS 18 will extend dark mode to the iPhone's home screen's app icons. This is according to multiple sources familiar with the matter. Now, this builds on top of iOS 13's dark mode, which over the time, a lot of people are loving. I know some people use their devices almost exclusively on dark mode, but this basically builds on the new customizations and dark mode together. iOS 18 will go further by automatically giving app icons a dark or black tint when dark mode is turned on. The feature will initially be limited to built-in Apple apps. I assume there will be like an API that gives like developers the opportunity to create like dark versions of their app icon. But perhaps there will be an API that allows third-party. You see, this was the one article that I didn't actually read prior, but I just skimmed it, and this is why I'm basically saying what they're saying. We believe that the dark app icons paired with a dark wallpaper will give the home screen a full-blown dark mode appearance for the first time. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman recently reporting that iOS 18 will let users change the colors of app icons. I really should have read this article because it basically like gives all my points, but in a very concise matter. And this dark tint is related to that feature. And yeah, so basically, in Mac Rumors also does like obviously like link to the other articles that I've sort of already like read. So this is all the new stuff, and the last one I will put into like, so we have like several features, and maybe just maybe I'll just briefly put them out, right? But like this, right? So in terms of hardware, right, we are basically expecting none, right? Then we have like apps. Jesus Christ, how do I? Can I turn everything into like? No, what the? Can I not make the text larger inside here? I just make it. So apps, on basically on an individual level, right? And we've heard about big changes to notes, calculator stuff, right? The Photos app, etc. Basically, right? Then comes Apple Intelligence. No, I need it all as a title. Apple Intelligence. No big focus on Gen AI for photos, essays, etc. Instead, built through or just built into apps, Siri, and OS, and some things handled by OpenAI. Beyond that, what else did I say? Oh yeah, OS level. That would be stuff like privacy, security. Like we've talked about those features, like specifically for like Apple's AI push, but also for things like giving you app level control over a Face ID. And then basically like redesign. Right, and then we're talking primarily about like getting rid of the grid, basically more customization, and that applies throughout like the home screen, the control center, things like that. Roika or KE, even the basic M4 Mac will be absent. That's disappointing. Well, yeah, at least according to this, which customization is like American and which one is like US? I'll just write it with a Z. Yeah, it's unfortunate. At least according to rumors, I don't know if like we need like specifically like an M4 MacBook Air, because obviously we've just gotten the M3 version. It would obviously be nice to see like M4 successors to the MacBook Pro, but that depends on if the M4 Pro and the M4 Max are ready, because Apple obviously isn't gonna update like the base M4 MacBook Pro, but then leave the more expensive versions on the M3 Pro and the M3 Max chips, right? But I think especially when it comes to desktop, it's kind of a bummer to not get them. Like I think an M4 Mac Mini, even if they make it like $100 more expensive, but then they also give it like 12 512 gigabytes of base storage, I think that could actually work really, really well. Or hell, make it $200 more expensive, but now finally give it like a good base configuration with 512 gigs of storage and 12 gigs of memory. I think to a lot of people that will be way better than just paying $200 more to go from 256 gigabyte to 512, which is what most people want anyway. Like even if you work with like external storage, you probably want like dedicated storage on your device of like at least half a terabyte, at least in my opinion. Yeah, so we've talked a lot about basically what is coming like last minute that obviously builds on top of a lot of other stuff we've heard about. Jan Hendrik, my German viewer, saying you're very, very much looking forward to tomorrow. SMI, I do want to remind anybody who's watching right now that I will be streaming tomorrow's event. Please tune in. I know that most of you, of course, you will want to watch the actual WWDC because, as I said before, I cannot like live stream the actual event, but I can like talk during the event and react to individual announcements. So maybe you want to have me as a sidekick, basically watching together. You say that you hope that the 15 Pro Max will get cool AI features. That is definitely happening. I think a lot of people misunderstand, like when people say like, well, the M4 is supposedly getting some features maybe that the M3 isn't getting. The point with the M3, and I've covered this exhaustively on this channel and on Twitter, is that the M3's Apple Neural Engine is actually in capability closer to the one on the A16 processor, while the Neural Engine on the A17 Pro chip is like 90% of the performance of the one on the M4 chip. So this is why some stuff might be exclusive to M4, but all that stuff will be available on iPhone 15 Pro Max. There might be some discrepancy where older Macs and older iPads still get features that older iPhones won't. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's because Apple's AI features are not just based on the neural engine, but also on like the CPU, the GPU. All of those are pretty good at accelerating AI stuff. And obviously an M series processor has access to much, much more CPU cores, larger GPUs, and of course more memory by default and more memory bandwidth. No, so no, Jan, you won't have to upgrade your 15 Pro Max. Certainly not this year. I would assume maybe as Apple switches to like, I apologize, to 2 nanometer either next year or the year after. There might be like such a big efficiency jump. And maybe like we'll get further redesigns to the neural engine and whatever, that Apple will say, well, now those new features are exclusive to newer iPhones. But this year, I would expect almost no exclusive AI features on the iPhone 18 and on the A18, on the A18 Pro chips. Partially because there will be like no big bandwidth change. Like the A18 Pro will likely have like 20% more bandwidth than the A17 Pro. That doesn't really change much. It won't get like a huge efficiency jump because it's from N3B TSMC to N3E, and yeah, it's like no huge architectural redesign. So yeah, I would expect the 15 Pro Max to have almost everything you want. You hope that tomorrow's event will be longer. Well, yeah, it will be 2 hours. Like I can basically guarantee you that, which is if we actually go to Apple's previous events, right? Can I? So I'll mute them because I do definitely want to like. So dub at June 5th, 2023. 2 hours and 6 minutes. If we go even older and to dub June 6th, 2022. 1 hour and 48 minutes. So I would expect this to be a solid 2 hours, maybe slightly beyond, but Apple doesn't like going beyond 2 hours because they know that's just not what people are really looking for. But also, don't forget that this is WWDC, right? So tomorrow's keynote is not the only event. They will have like more details on the features and especially everything that's available to developers, which sometimes is very interesting. Across like their sessions coming throughout this week. So there will still be stuff left to cover. Yeah, at least I believe it will. Obviously, I cannot tell you. I do not have pre-access to how long this event will be, but let's see. Yeah, so this is basically everything that was coming like sort of last minute. Again, I do want to remind you that this is all based on something, right? Apple Intelligent is new. We've talked about multiple features throughout the operating system, throughout Siri that are coming to them. Now we basically know the branding for it. We have talked about some generative AI stuff for Apple, like auto replies and auto completion features, but also some whimsical stuff like generating your own emoji. But we've also talked about how Apple is not going into like the Sora competition round and letting you talk into Siri to like, oh, create me a video of like an alien going through a street in a noir kind of way, right? That will not be Apple's like play, at least not this year. As I've said, you can expect system level improvements to privacy, security, to features like Control Center. Those features will also be part of a broader redesign across iOS, its individual apps. I don't know which of those things are exclusive to like iOS as like iPhone OS or like what will already come to iPad or Mac. We've talked about things like even like a redesigned settings app, but then we've also talked about a restructured settings app for Mac. So you don't know which part exists where, right? And of course, with individual applications, it's very, very much depending on how much they're like supercharged by AI, how much some of them will get like individual features like stacked on top and on top. As like we're supposedly getting a brand new calculator for all that's worth. I don't know how important that is to most people. Jan saying again, have I seen in Apple newsroom that you can control your devices with your eyes? Yes, this is part. They always introduce like their accessibility features, before DubDub because they're like World Accessibility Days, like a couple of weeks before that. I think I mentioned those features. On my channel, but I don't think that I've gone into great detail on them. But yeah, like the biggest feature. Wait, where's Newsroom? What? Am I just blind? Apple expands developer support and resources. There's new Apple Arcade stuff. They announced DubDub. Apple updates this. Apple announces new accessibility features. Right. So this will be part of iOS 18, the next version of macOS. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to iOS 18 specifically, the latest rumors, I don't know how trustworthy they are, do point towards that all devices that currently support iOS 17 will support iOS 18. That would mean going back to the iPhone XR and XS, which is absolutely mind-boggling given that those are devices from 2018, and that means that they will keep on getting updates throughout 2015, but take those rumors with a grain of salt. So when it comes to those accessibility features, the primary one is basically like eye tracking. That one is coming to iPad and iPhone. It's powered by AI, so you can already feel like Apple is preparing their audience to hear a lot more more about AI. Eye tracking gives users a built-in option for navigating iPad and iPhone with just their eyes. Designed for users with physical disabilities, eye tracking uses the front-facing camera to set up and calibrate in seconds, and with on-device machine learning, so Apple still likes that term machine learning, all data used to set up and control this feature is kept securely on device and isn't shared with Apple. So again, this is why when I tell you stuff like that on a system-wide level, Apple will keep on talking about privacy and security. You bet your ass they will, because they will even do that here. Eye tracking works across iPadOS and iOS apps and doesn't require additional hardware accessories. So I assume it's for now very heavily tailored towards like replicating multi-touch. With eye tracking, wait, or did it already exist as like a feature for macOS? I'm actually not sure. With eye tracking, users can navigate through the elements of an app and use dwell control to activate each element, accessing additional features such as physical buttons, swipes, and other gestures solely with their eyes. Next is music haptics, make songs more accessible. The Taptic engine in iPhone plays taps, gestures, and refined vibrations to the audio of the music. So this is for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, basically giving them like a glimpse into what music is like. New features for a wide range of speech. With vocal shortcuts, iPhone and iPad users can assign custom utterance that Siri can understand to launch shortcuts and complete complex tasks. Listen for atypical speech, another new feature, gives users an option for enhancing speech recognition for a wider range of speech. Listen for atypical speech uses on-device machine learning to recognize user speech patterns, designed for users with acquired or progressive conditions that affect speech, so basically like motor and neuron diseases and stuff like that, designed for users with acquired such as cerebral palsy, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or stroke. These features provide a new level of customization and control, building on features introduced in iOS 18 for users who are non-speaking or at risk of losing their ability to speak. Okay, that's cool. It will be interesting to see just how well it works, because obviously, I mean, it's machine learning accelerated, but that is no guarantee that it works incredibly well. Vehicle motion cues can help reduce motion sickness. Research shows that motion sickness is commonly caused by a sensory conflict between what a person sees and what they feel. That's true, which can prevent some users from comfortably using iPhone or iPad while riding in a moving vehicle. I've seen some people stupidly say that this is like for drivers. It's not. It's like if just you're on a train or whatever, or in a car, but not driving yourself. The vehicle motion cues, animated dots on the edges of the screen, represent changes in vehicle motion to help reduce sensory conflict without interfering with the main content. Using sensors built into iPhone and iPad, which I assume mainly is like gyroscope and accelerometers, vehicle motion cues recognizes when a user is in a moving vehicle and responds accordingly. And you can control it via control center. So basically, in a left turn, it does that. In a right turn, it moves in the opposite direction. Okay, that's interesting. So basically, how like stuff in front of you would blur according to like to what direction the car is accelerating. It does that, but with those dots, but not the actual content on the screen. I'm not actually sure how helpful that will be, but maybe they ran like an internal study or something. CarPlay gets voice control and more accessibility updates. Accessibility features also coming to visionOS. So the list is quite extensive, and I do encourage you to check out those features. I always say that accessibility features are iOS, iPadOS, macOS features in general. They're not just for people who have any kind of handicap, but maybe just people who want those specific like tuned experiences. That being said, Obviously, if Apple covers them like on stage, they do tend to have a little more meaning for me personally than stuff like this. At least for now, God knows anything can happen in life. One can knock on wood, not become dependent on features like that. But obviously, as somebody who works in the medical field, I do know how much people struggle with their daily lives, and I'm very, very glad that companies like Apple are actually working to improve those experiences. So yeah, I'm very, very happy about that. I will be personally trying out eye tracking because that one sounds the most like fun in a way. I know that obviously it's not fun if you have to do it, but it is something that I definitely want to just play around with and see how well it works. It will obviously not compare to somebody who's truly like incapable of just using their hands and whatever, because those people definitely will have a much, much larger incentive to get really, really good at eye control. But I will be basically giving you like my first impressions on how well this works. Yeah, and I think with that, I'm kind of finished for today. I think a 1 hour stream is quite nice. We're 20 hours removed from the actual event. So I once again want to remind you to tune in tomorrow. And as always, please subscribe, please like, please share the video, please comment on the stream and then on the video once it's been uploaded. And if you want to support this channel directly, please consider giving a super chat or a super sticker or subscribing to my Patreon, which does have a free tier to support this channel directly in the long term. All help is appreciated, as is just watching those videos of my videos. So thank you so much. I will give you a lot of coverage throughout the WWDC week. So this is why I do have to rest now. I thank everyone who tuned into this one, and I thank in advance to anyone who is tuning in tomorrow. If you want to always be in the know for when my streams start, hit the notification bell or follow me on Twitter, where I always share out when the next video will be going live. But until then, guys, thank you again so much. See you tomorrow. Looking forward to any kind of like suggestions from you, what exactly you'd want to see from my dub coverage. But for now, this is Mark Tech tuning out.